Morning. The cloudy sky foreshadowed rain. Suddenly a heavy downpour began. Thunder rumbled, lightning flashed. But the summer rain slowly gave way to the flying wind, which quickly dispersed the clouds. By running away, they cleared the sky for the rays of the already rising sun. Alexei Nikolaevich opened his eyes. The wife was still sleeping, sweetly smacking her lips in her sleep. He looked at the beautiful face of his beloved woman. She's so good. I love her so much. Alexei Nikolaievitch's first wife died 5 years ago from asthma. Attempts to save her were unsuccessful. I couldn't give birth to children. Knowing that her husband was healthy and his desire to have a child further aggravated the guilt and her failing health. Previously, as a student, before meeting Alexei, she had an abortion secretly at home, and here are its consequences: infertility. I didn't confess to my husband for a long time. Then I got sick, my asthma progressed, and confession was no longer necessary. Before her death, she nevertheless confessed to her husband about infertility and endless lies, justifying herself by saying that she loved him very much. She asked for forgiveness, knowing that neither he nor God would forgive her sin. Alexei Nikolaevich, becoming a widower, thought, "Did I love my wife?" I couldn't find an answer. Why did I lie for so long? I would understand. Well, I made a mistake in my youth. Everything can be forgiven, but not a lie. She passed away, and there was an emptiness left in his soul. The years have flown by like a whirlwind. There are no children, and he is far from a boy. Short-term relationships with women did not bring him happiness. None of them became dear and close in spirit to him. I recently turned 44 years old. More than 2 years ago, he met a woman on the train when returning from a business trip, 8 years younger than himself. Beautiful, charming, cheerful, with a sense of humor. She somehow immediately sank into his soul. She lived not far away, but in another city. We dated for 4 months. He came to her, she came to him. Alexei fell in love with Tatiana, that was her name, and soon proposed to become his wife. He knew that she liked him, but he unexpectedly received a refusal. Tatiana, knowing about his past life, said, "Sorry, but I can't deceive you. I was married. As a child, I fell through the ice while skating, was rescued, I was sick, and as a result of this cold, I cannot have children. However, I didn't break up with my husband for this reason. He loved vodka more than me." Tatiana's confession puzzled the man, but 2 weeks later he proposed to her again. "I'm probably not destined to have children, and it's already too late. I loved you, thank you for telling the truth. How you feel about me, tell it like it is." Tatiana hugged Alexei by the shoulders. "I love you too. To be honest, in my life I have never known true love. It's up to you." They married. They have been together for almost 2 years now. Alexei believed that Tatiana was his destiny. The clock struck 7 o'clock in the morning. Tatiana, opening her eyes, sweetly stretched with a smile on her face, kissed her husband. "Are you awake?" "Yes, no. I kept looking at you and admiring you. What a blessing it is that I have you." In the evening, Alexei Nikolaevich flew on a business trip to Moscow. Working as chief engineer at an aircraft factory, He had special powers and had unsurpassed authority. Tatiana worked as a psychologist in one company. The wife fed her husband all day, preparing him various delicacies. The doorbell rang. Tatiana, opening the door, saw Alexei's friend, who is also the head of the technical department of the aircraft plant. Alexei was surprised. Something happened. Merry and clever Peter answered. Don't worry, there are some questions on the way to the airport. We'll discuss them. I let go of your car. Let's go in my Jeep and talk at the same time. I hope you don't mind. No, but we seem to have discussed everything. Okay, come down. I'll be right out. Alexei said goodbye to his wife, kissed her, promising that he would return soon. Okay, honey, I'll wait. I love you. Call when you board. Bye, my love. Fine. I'll call. The door closed. Going outside, Alexei got into the Jeep. Let's go. So what's the matter? Peter began to clarify some questions on the drawings again so that Alexei would not forget. My dear friend, what's wrong with you? You know that I am well prepared. I ate the dog at my job. You're testing me like a schoolboy. Alyoshka, nothing. I just decided to see you off. Are you my young lady? Some kind of miracles. Already at the airport, Peter was indeed worried like a girl. There was more than half an hour left before registration. Well, speak up already, Alexei repeated mockingly with a smile. Don't interrupt me, please. Alexei, you hand over your ticket. We will call that you are sick and I will fly in your place. You know, I also ate a dog at my job, maybe smaller than yours. Next, you call your wife and tell her that you're flying. You will sit at the airport for another 3 hours, maybe less. You go to a restaurant, have a drink, calm down, and only then go home by taxi without warning anyone. Now the main thing is, remember, I'm your friend. I'll give my head for you. You know it yourself. I just can't be silent anymore. I know exactly where and how I found out this news. I won't say. Tonight on TVM, my wife's date with a pilot. He will come to her home. I had hinted to you before that she was very free in communicating with men, but you didn't even want to listen, ready to tear me to shreds rather than believe me. Many people at the factory are gossiping about your wife's infidelity. Some saw her with a civilian man, others with a pilot, maybe more than one. I can't let all sorts of gossips talk about your name. You are a famous person in the city, and these conversations need to stop. This has been going on for over 6 months now. You know, when they gave me a recording of the conversation between the pilot and your wife on the phone, I stopped doubting it. Trust, but verify, as says the popular proverb. If I'm lying, do with me what you want. You can then spit in my face, smash my face, I'll endure everything. But I want you to figure it out yourself. It's no good. I'm offended and hurt for you. You have the key to the apartment. You will quietly enter after 1 in the morning. You will understand everything else yourself. I beg you, control yourself. I really beg you. Peter fell silent. Alexei was silent, then said quietly, Are you crazy? What kind of games are these? Well, I don't believe it. I see how she treats me. She is sincere. Even in bed, she constantly talks to me about love and is glad that I met her on the way. I can't even imagine for a moment that she could lie so skillfully. This is some kind of nonsense. Go to hell. The announcer announced check-in for the flight flying to Moscow. Alexei stood up, registered the ticket, and returned to Peter again. Come on, leave. I'm waiting, otherwise we'll quarrel. Do you understand me? Peter leaned over, sitting in a chair, and realized that this news had already blown Alexei's mind. And now he still had to go home and check. So Petya, as I understand it, you have a ticket for this flight. Peter nodded. Go, hand over your ticket and leave. You don't even understand what a humiliating position you put me in. No, you plunged me into shit. Peter understood everything in his soul. He could even imagine himself in his place. It's really difficult for a decent man to understand and accept such a challenge, and moreover, to go spying. Alyoshka, forgive me, time will tell. If you are not ready today, then fly to Moscow. He patted his friend on the shoulder, wishing him a soft landing, and left. Squeezing his head with his hands, Alexei really didn't want to believe in his wife's betrayal. His thoughts were confused. He felt a wild pain in his chest. After taking the pill, he realized that a stone had been thrown, and it was not so easy to catch it and throw it out of his heart. The plane was boarded. Alexei was sitting in a chair. A few minutes later, the announcer announced the name of the late passenger who had checked in and invited him to board. Alexei, without unclenching his hands, lowered his head, continued to sit. What to do? I won't be able to work peacefully in Moscow. Dirty thoughts eat my brain. I dialed my wife's number on the phone and confirmed in a calm voice. I'm off, bye. I heard the joyful voice of his wife, who wished him a safe journey. Alexei sat in the waiting room for more than 2 hours. He never returned the ticket. I went outside. The rain was drizzling again, covering the asphalt with a wet film of water, which reflected the glare from the light of the burning lanterns. The air, saturated with the freshness of the rain, seemed to calm the face. My head ached terribly. My thoughts voiced the same question. What to do? Inside, the mind prompted go home. The soul protested. You don't want this truth. You're afraid of it. However, you still need to decide something, the mind stupidly repeated. Alexei took a taxi and went home. Having risen to the 5th floor of a house built in Stalin's times, with high ceilings, columns, and various stucco decorations, he stopped on the landing. His heart was pounding, the veins in his temples were pulsating. He stood under the doors for more than half an hour, but there was no point in hesitating. He quietly entered the hallway, seeing someone else's men's shoes standing there. Gathering all his will into a fist, he ordered himself. I'm calm. Now all I need is endurance. The face seemed to have turned to stone. The extinct gaze was freed from any emotions. Alexei understood, first of all, calmness, equanimity, hidden contempt, no hysteria. This would be a powerful blow, similar to a knockout. But his thoughts frightened him. Anger, jealousy. Anger began to boil. But, no, it's not mine. I know what to do. He put on soft slippers and went into the living room. The round table set for the evening dinner had an unsightly appearance. An open bottle of unfinished cognac and a drunk bottle of champagne rested on the table. Beautiful plates, with leftover food nestled next to the bottles. On one of the chairs hung a shirt and jacket of a military pilot. On another chair, his wife's beautiful Chinese robe was carelessly thrown. Red roses in a vase and a beautiful box of chocolates decorated the coffee table. When I left, they weren't there, Alexei thought sadly. The man walked into the kitchen. An arch decorated with moldings connected it to the dining room. He sat down on a chair, trying to collect his thoughts. He returned a little later to the living room, collected the dirty dishes, took them to the kitchen, washed them, and put them on a towel. I went in again, took the pilot's clothes Ika, thoroughly cleaned, ironed, and hung on a chair in the living room. In the hallway, I cleaned his shoes and placed them next to his clothes. He carefully ironed his wife's robe and hung it next to the men's clothes. Walking quietly on the soft carpet, he approached the bedroom door, opening it slightly. He saw a couple in love in each other's arms. The man's hand rested on his wife's white, luxurious breast. The bedroom was a little stuffy. Chinese silk sheets barely covered their naked bodies. A mask of pleasure and complete sexual satisfaction froze on the faces of the lovers. His wife's shamelessness unsettled him. It was as if the devil had entered Alexei's body, covered his eyes, plugged his ears, and turned him into a stone monster. Closing the door, Alexei headed into the kitchen, tiredly sat down on a chair. Thoughts left his mind. There was emptiness inside. It was as if he was chained to the chair. The tongue stopped obeying him. It seemed to Alexei that life was dying within him. The wall clock showed 3 o'clock in the morning. The time had come for sound sleep and amazing dreams. Outside the window, the dawn was just breaking. The mysterious darkness was reluctantly but slowly receding. He opened the refrigerator and took out the necessary ingredients to prepare breakfast. Within an hour, a prepared breakfast awaited guests in the dining room, in which the rich aroma of brewed coffee was already in the air. Coffee, poured into cups, stood on a tray. Alexei, taking a tray of coffee, headed to the bedroom, quietly entering, approached the vacationers, and said louder than usual, "Please, hurry up. Your clothes in the living room have been cleaned and ironed. I'm waiting for you in the dining room for breakfast." Opening their eyes, the wife and her lover looked in bewilderment at the man standing in front of them. Probably, the interrupted deep sleep did not allow him to immediately figure out what happened. Where did the husband appear in the bedroom? "Have a cup of coffee. It will cheer you up." He quietly walked out the bedroom door. It is difficult, and there is no need to talk about the shock that completely covered the loving couple. Half an hour later, both, first the pilot, then the wife, appeared in the doorway of the dining room. The lover's condition was considered no less shocking than in the bedroom. "Please take a seat. It's time for early breakfast. I think you're hungry. Dear, have a cup of coffee. You like to drink coffee in the morning? I brewed it just the way you like it. Please come to the table. Everything is hot. Eat. Here are warm croissants for coffee, just heated in the microwave. Bon appétit." Alexei's impenetrable face, as if dressed in a stone mask, calmly looked at his wife and man. The pilot, as a man of a courageous profession, did not fuss, was mostly silent. Realizing that no words could explain his presence here, he sat down at the table and decided to have breakfast. The wife, without a single spot of blood on her pale face, looked at her husband in fear, as if she had lost the power of speech. Only thoughts feverishly scrolled through my head. Why is he silent? He could have shouted at me, called me a whore, hit me, but he is silent. You can go crazy. I was never afraid of him. Why now I am seized with unbearable horror? My heart is covered with ice. Every cell of my body is trembling in fear because it does not know what will happen next. I'm shivering and scared. What's the matter, dear? You don't want coffee? I tried for you. Drink, he said sharply and insistently. With a trembling hand, she took the cup and began to drink the coffee, her teeth, like a small hammer, knocking on the edge of the cup. Alexei still remained absolutely calm, only inside his thoughts were restrained by words of disgust and contempt for his wife. Having finished breakfast, the pilot got up from the table, thanked Alexei and asked, "Will you allow me to leave?" "Of course, you are free," Alexei answered calmly, with an almost invisible grin. The pilot headed into the hallway, pulling the door handle. It was locked. He returned without going into the dining room. He realized that he would not be able to leave through the door. The only option was to leave through the balcony. The 5th floor is high. Looking from the balcony, he saw below, almost under him, an iron fence with sharp spears at the top. The house was asleep. There is no other way out, the pilot thought sadly. Having overcome the 4th floor, I reached the 3rd floor. Inside, strangely enough, trembling reigned. The owner's calmness surprised him and led him to dark thoughts. It would be better if he shouted, hit me, insulted me with the last words, thought the pilot. But his ominous silence is worse than torture. My nerves were gone. Throwing his leg over the balcony, he felt that the edge of the balcony had fallen off. The leg was without support. The second leg did not have time to find a reliable support point. The second hand did not have time to grab the edge of the balcony. The man instantly flew down and fell on the fence spears. He groaned. Unbearable pain shook his body, lost consciousness. He died from a deep wound that touched a vital organ. The wife seemed to sense trouble. Looking out the window, she saw the prostrate, lifeless body of the pilot on the fence. Covering her mouth with her hand, she howled wildly. The thick walls of the house were impenetrable to sound. She rushed around the room, not knowing what to do. I looked for the phone, but didn't find it. The home phone didn't work. Measuring to the room from corner to corner, she rushed around the apartment like a cornered animal. Squeezing her temples with her hands, she thought feverishly. Lord, what should I do? He won't forgive me. How could I invite a lover to my apartment? Madness. In my husband's eyes, I see a sentence for myself, a death. I seem to hear his words, "You have committed a terrible meanness. Redeem her." She said something to her husband, but he did not react. Alexei sat on a chair in the kitchen, head down, not hearing or seeing anyone. Tired of useless tossing, despair and endless fear, she ran into the bathroom. Opening the door of the bottom drawer of the dressing table, I saw a bottle of vinegar essence. Unconsciously, without control of herself, in a semi-fainting state, she drank half the bottle in one gulp and collapsed on the floor. A wild pain in her throat gripped her face. Choking, she screamed hoarsely and called for help, but there was silence. The walls, which did not allow sounds to pass through, were silent. A woman with a distorted face was writhing in agony on the floor. Her hands scratched her face in the hope of somehow helping herself. Her exhausted eyes asked for help from fear and pain. A few minutes later, she was no longer screaming. Only a terrible wheezing filled the room with an incomprehensible, desperate sound. The bathroom was empty. Having made a final sound, like a wheeze, she fell silent in her death throes. Severe pain and shock caused respiratory arrest. Death brought her relief. After some time, Alexei entered the bathroom. He stood with an indifferent face, looking at his wife's beautiful face, which had now turned into a disfigured mask. Coming out of the bathroom, he felt that his legs, as if chained, were difficult to move. With numb hands, it was difficult to dial the ambulance number on the phone, then the police number. Having given the address and last name, he muffled, "Come, there's a woman's body in the apartment. A man's body is near the house." He hung up. He opened the door in the hallway, sat down on a chair. His head was breaking into pieces, as if a tight hoop was whispering to him a promise to tear his head into small pieces. He leaned against the wall and waited for the ambulance and the police. There was a trial. For the first time in 20 years of judicial practice, the case of the convicted N. Severjan was transferred to the judge as strange and unusual. He had to solve a difficult problem. The judge is a woman. She had to twist a lot of painful thoughts in her head, rummage through many court cases about adultery in the family, but this case did not give a clear answer. What decision should I make? The article "murder" is not suitable. He did not kill. His victims passed their own sentence. Some may object. He pushed them morally. During the interrogation, the investigator with the convicted person included in the protocol, obviously. Alexei Nikolaevich did not hide the fact that having seen his wife's betrayal with his own eyes, it was as if he had lost his mind. Everything he told just confirmed that there could be no violence. He never raised his voice. He tried with external calm and strange silence to prove to his lovers, especially his wife, that betrayal and treason are already a crime against the family. Their strange actions, a cleaning clothes, breakfast, coffee and a closed door were necessary so that this couple, especially the wife, understood the meanness of what they had done. He could not foresee that such a tragedy would happen to them. Yes, he closed the door, turned off the house phone, took away their mobile phones so that they would feel the same torment, the same pain that he had to endure. Of course, after a certain time, he would release the pilot and kick his wife out of the house. But when a tragedy had already happened with his wife and her lover, his help was useless. Although he could have sent his wife to the hospital, which he regrets that he did not do. Let her live with what she herself had done. The most experienced lawyer in the city undertook to defend Severjan N. So they presented to the court the facts of the past life of Alexei Nikolaevich's wife. The former prostitute, serving clients for money, was married. The ex-husband, having learned that his wife was constantly cheating on him, drank himself from grief. Tatiana kicked him out of the apartment onto the street. He became homeless, spent the night wherever he had to, and was killed in one of the street fights. The wife's legend that she once fell through the ice as a child and became infertile for this reason was not confirmed by relatives. The life of a prostitute made her infertile. Having learned these details from the lawyer, Alexei was simply shocked. After all, he fell in love with her, lost his head, and didn't want to know anything. He believed her. Perhaps she wanted to change her life, but her past life again pulled her into the whirlpool. This is already akin to an illness. The petitions of the enterprises, for the accused was a public person, the characteristics of Severjan from the enterprise where he worked, from other organizations, characterized him as a worthy, respected, honest and wonderful family man and leader. Witnesses spoke in his defense, confirming the infidelities of his wife, who had been his wife for only 2 years. The depravity of this woman is obvious. The pilot's wife spoke at the trial. Of course, she was in pain. She had 2 young children in her arms, but she did not defend her husband. Because she guessed about his infidelities, and his leaving his mistresses through balconies is not new to her. She believed that this was an accident. Maybe God himself decided to punish the sinner. Before making a decision, the judge gave the defendant the last word. During his time under investigation, Alexei Nikolaevich seemed to have aged. His gray temples spoke of suffering that he would not even wish on his enemy. He regretted the tragedy that had happened, because the intention of bringing them physical illness was not part of his plans. He expressed condolences to the pilot's wife about the death of her husband, notified his lawyer about the transfer of a significant amount of money to his wife for child support, and from now on he will help them. The court retired to pronounce sentence. The court verdict is not guilty, because there is no corpus delicti. Severjina N. released from custody in the courtroom. The audience greeted the court's decision by standing, thereby expressing gratitude to the judge for a fair decision. In life, it often happens that a man completely trusts his chosen one. Sometimes love blinds the lover. He becomes deaf. He hears only his beloved. He simply loves. A truly loving man always has a pure soul, and no one is safe from mistakes. The same can be said about women. In a hurry, having sold his apartment, car, and dacha, Alexei Nikolaevich suddenly quit. All attempts to persuade the chief engineer on the part of management and shareholders to stay and continue working were unsuccessful. Alexei Nikolaevich explained very simply, "Sorry friends, but I can't. I have to leave. I thank you all for your kind attitude towards me, but my decision is final." Everyone understood the real reason and sincerely regretted the departure of a talented leader and specialist. Peter, as a friend, could not find a place for himself. His faithful friend Alyoshka left him. Alexei admitted to him, "Petya, do you remember our friend Seryoga? We all studied at the military flight school then. He got married and left with his wife for Eastern Siberia. 6 years ago, his wife and son tragically died. You were out of town, and I went to his funeral alone, helped him financially and supported him. An irreparable loss. He loved his wife, son, and the child she carried within her very much. Grief bent him. He stopped flying, quit his job, and went to the taiga. He got a job as a huntsman and still lives and works there to this day. I found out his exact coordinates and wrote a letter. Unexpectedly, I received a response letter from Seryoga. He is waiting for me. He wrote that I once helped him, Now he will help me. Kindred souls feel pain equally. Peter couldn't stand it. There were tears in his eyes. Alyoshka, what would it be like without you? After all, we've been together all our lives. It's okay. Come and visit us. We'll hunt. I can't stay here. The money, he named the amount received for the sale of the apartment, I gave in full to Irina, the wife of the deceased pilot. A good woman, she cried, regretted that I was leaving. She understands everything. I have been unlucky in fate with women, and I will not experience it anymore. I'll buy myself some hunting equipment. I bought an excellent gun for Seryoga as a gift. Maybe I'll work like Seryoga as a huntsman. I'm telling you now, but I can't hear myself well. Time will tell how to live further. You know, Seryoga wrote in a letter that the taiga is the best healer for a bleeding soul. The taiga has its own laws, harsh but fair. Only there will I find peace and forgiveness. Strangely enough, trouble gave me a chance to start a new life. Friends hugged each other. The next day, Alexei Nikolaevich flew to the distant, but already so close and dear Siberia.